former host of Redacted tonight, because America doesn't like free press and its fake democracy. And moment of clarity, ladies and gentlemen, Lee Camp.
Hey, man, what's up?
There's a delay between your voice and your video.
Really? I don't feel like that's on.
No, just saying.
They did?
It works. It works now. It's all good.
This is going to be an interesting episode.
Granted, I'm in really, horrible hotel Wi-Fi land. So we'll see how good this goes. But I think it's going to be fantastic.
Considering how much we interrupt each other, this is going to be a lot of fun.
I hope. I have this horrible lighting. My face is all orange. I don't know. Like I was going to bring my ring light with me on the road, but it's this big thing. And I was like, ugh, I got to get a smaller ring light, I think.
I noticed your bed has 2 reading lamps. If you were to lay down between both of them, would that help?
And just hold the laptop. Yeah, I think that would absolutely help. I was trying to there's a TV right behind. I was trying to turn that on to did that change the lighting at all?
Then we just see UFC on your eyeballs, just reflecting on your pupils.
The UFC, yeah, that doesn't do anything. This is horrible. Right, I love that you think all I have on my TV 24/7 is just UFC. That's all I have.
I assumed as much. Yes, it was that and the Mighty Ducks. That and the Mighty Ducks. Yeah.
Ducks. Yeah, I have the Mighty Ducks. I have the Criterion collection, so the Mighty Ducks. So
man, the director's cut. That's the best.
It's really one of the most artistic pieces about youth hockey that you're ever going to see. I mean, it's really.
I would go out on a limb to say one of the best movies ever made on youth hockey.
It's definitely on your short list of amazing youth hockey movies, because there's so many great youth hockey. It's such a great genre of movies. So
really especially youth hockey that involves a Sheen Estevez brother, I would say best on the list.
Well, I honestly don't know how you make a youth hockey movie without a Sheen or an Estevez in there. I don't know. You're really shorting the audience, I think.
It's tough to even have a youth hockey league without a Sheen showing up at some point. Usually drunk, usually demanding some time on the ice.
Just drinking tiger's blood, punching somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're uncovering. This is Week in Government Secrets. We're going to talk about youth hockey cover-ups. That's what we're going to talk about. So,
I mean, people listen. We gotta listen to the masses, and they've been asking for revelations on youth hockey. So it's it was about time. We ignored, honestly, Graham. We covered it up and ignored it long enough.
They uncovered us. The audience was like, "Why are Lee and Graham deliberately not talking about youth hockey? It's like they're paid by Big Hockey Puck to not cover what's happening." Well, I should say this is very exciting. Everyone, ladies and gentlemen, this is Government Secrets episode 80, Hotel Room Edition. It's a big number, 80.
It's amazing. Hotel Room Edition, Graham on the road. We saw that young lady scramble out from underneath the sheets before you started. And let's get going. Yeah.
She's a youth hockey referee, so it's really exciting. All right, buddy.
Hold on. Let me drink out of my mug here.
Oh, how did you get that mug made? How did you do that?
Dude, I don't know. Kate sent it to me.
Kate?
Yeah.
Kate, are you making illegal Government Secrets merch, like black market Seeks merch?
There's illegal merch that has been done behind your back, apparently.
Wow. Well, we could set up a GovSeeks merch page if we wanted to.
We could. as long as the mug only is used to drink green juice or alcohol. Those are your options.
That's awesome. Okay, sure. Just a green and vodka, or just a green and gin. How do you make?
Those are on my list of most revolting drinks to even just hear about.
Or Lee, do you just go, give me a green smoothie with a vodka back? Is that how you drink it? And just
I go up to the bar and I said, please make a green smoothie drink that I won't remember. That's what I ask for.
So you get annihilated, but still feel sort of healthy.
Yeah. I wake up from my blackout mid run.
I picture you getting the green drink and then the shot, and you just throw the green drink over your shoulder and then just drink the whiskey. That's what I picture you doing.
Yeah, well, the government secrets mug has a false bottom that you can pour the green juice into, and it keeps it separate. Keeps it separate from the alcohol.
Of course, the government secrets mug has some sort of a hidden secret thing in it.
Yeah, secret
Lee and I want to monitor. Yeah, we want to monitor all your conversations. Not to give to the NSA. We just want to hear what you guys are saying about us. That's all. Behind our backs. That's all we're doing. All right, you want to do this week in government secrets?
Yes. So this week in government secrets, April 15th, today in history, 1920. There was a robbery. There was a robbery in Braintree, Massachusetts, which can't get a better town name than that. I'm sure they move a lot of units in Braintree. Great real estate market in Braintree.
Well, just move a lot of units. Just the units of anything are not moving in Braintree.
Listen, if you want to live a happy life, you get your ass to Braintree. That's where you can raise the kids. A lot of above ground pools. It's just wonderful out in Braintree.
This guy's just getting drunk in Moose Lodges or wherever else is going on in Braintree.
So there was an armed robbery of the Slater and Morrill Shoe Company in Braintree, and a guard and a paymaster were murdered. And the two people accused of murdering the other two people were Nicholas Sacco and Bartolomeo. I can't pronounce these names. Vanzetti. I know Sacco and Vanzetti, but I don't know how to pronounce their first names. Nicola I can get. Bartolomeo I can't. Anyway, Sacco and Vanzetti. This day in history was when the robbery took place that they were accused of. This ultimately became a famous trial and execution of two radicals. They were anarchists. They had three strikes against them. They were anarchists, they were immigrants, and they were Italian. All very hated things at that time. Luckily, we've come to our senses, and we no longer hate immigrants. So,
yes, we open them with open arms. That's why we put them in cages at the border. We cannot celebrate how much we love them more.
Yes, if they're holding a Ukrainian flag, then we're big fans. Otherwise, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
But so they had three strikes against them. So they're ultimately tried for those murders and executed. But in the 6 or 7 years between when it happened and when they were executed, it became like an international story of these innocent men being prosecuted for basically being radicals, being anarchists. And it was during one of our many Red Scares. Now we're in Red Scare number, I think, 63. 1921, as we discussed, after World War I, and after the revolution in Russia, the anti-Russian fervor was very strong. So that transferred to anti-anarchist, anti-immigrant, all of those things, and they were ultimately executed. Obviously, became a very well-known case of innocent people being executed. But I am proud to say we learned our lesson. And since that time, 1927, when they were executed, we have not executed any more innocent people.
No, that's the great thing about America. It always makes one mistake and then learns and never makes that mistake again.
Never makes it again.
One thing from this show, America never makes the same mistake twice.
Absolutely. That was, of course, a lie. We've executed many innocent people, and we do it every day. And just recently in South Carolina, they brought back the firing squad. So,
what?
Yeah, firing squad back in action, South Carolina.
Oh God! Are they going to live stream this, or what are they like? What are they going to do with this firing squad?
It is on Twitch. Yeah, Twitch.
What bums me, I'm laughing because it's probably, if they haven't thought of it, somebody watching this is going, "Oh, that's good. We should Twitch." We should Twitch out the executions now.
Well, they did just spend $53,000 to renovate their execution chambers to make them acceptable for firing squads because they decided they were bringing them back. And I don't know what the tens of thousands of dollars went to, but I'm assuming bleachers.
And probably just like a mattress behind where they shoot the guys to soak up the bullets. They just got bleachers and a mattress.
Plastic wrap the mattresses. Yep.
Yeah. I'm so glad that money was spent. I'm sure there's nothing else that money could have been used for in South Carolina that could make people's lives better. I'm sure that's
no. Zero poor people. They all have health care. It's a wonderful state. A lot of people don't know about South Carolina. It is a bliss-filled utopia.
As is all of America. Is a bliss-filled utopia.
But at least some people are getting out via firing squad.
Yeah, I bet you that's like a box you're going to be able to check, like bankruptcy for a medical debt, or you have to pay it off, or firing squad, and your family's not stuck with this debt. All right, just put one between my head. That's cool.
Yeah, it is an option on the health insurance forms now.
When you leave the hospital after some like $50,000, $100,000 whatever procedure or something, they just give you that box to check. Now, do you want to pay this back in installments or just firing squad and we wipe it clean?
I suppose that's true. I read about how South Carolina brought back the firing squad. I didn't think to ask for what. So could be for something other than a capital punishment case. Could be, people behind on their rent. Could be close talkers.
Parking tickets. Close talkers. They're murdering close talkers. Hi. Would you like to, could we talk briefly? Just a couple things. Close talkers. All right. Thanks for that. This week in Government Secrets.
That's This Week in Government Secrets, yeah.
And now Government Secrets, segment number one. Are we done with World War I? Are you still clocking that one in?
Yes, we finished up World War I. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I'll do mine first.
Go for it.
Now, we have discussed on this show, we did an episode where we just sort of did the broad strokes of all the CIA involvement in Central and South America. But we also said we could do separate episodes on all of these. So I wanted to do about the 1954 Guatemalan coup.
Let me take you back to a simpler time. It's 1954. the hottest film in the theaters is Marilyn Monroe's Some Like It Hot. No, I don't know. I don't know years of film.
Elvis Presley was rocking everybody with the hound dog, and the CIA was doing Operation PB Successfully, which was a covert operation carried out by the United States Central Intelligence Agency that deposed the democratically elected Guatemalan president Jaco Arbenz. I'm sorry.
Arbenz, yeah.
Arbenz, and ended the Guatemalan Revolution. So it's that classic CIA. I'll get into the details here of guy was elected democratically. American business interests were like, no, sir. And then this guy. So after we ended the Guatemalan Revolution, it installed the military dictatorship of Carlos Castillo Armas, the first in a series of U.S.-backed authoritarian rulers in Guatemala. Remember now, we don't like authoritarian rulers that fight us. So we have a problem with Putin, but we have no problem murdering democratically elected people and putting them in power.
Yep.
This is so just a little history here.
To this day, we give aid to 70% of all the world's dictators. So we love the right kind of dictator.
Yes. So and we've talked about this before. If you're a dictator, a young upstart dictator, going to the dictator open mics around town, figuring out how to be the best kind of dictator you can, I always tell you, just play ball with the U.S. and you can do whatever you want. Like, just,
Yep.
Don't like, we don't like America. Just say America's fantastic, and you will be given, swords and gunboats.
If you're a Juan Guaido out there, never been elected to hardly anything, but still have your eye on, becoming an authoritarian ruler of your country, just go and hang out outside the White House and say you'd like to play ball, and they'll just announce you the head of the country.
Yes. If you're like a freshman at dictator college or whatever, and you're like, how do I figure this out? That's what you do. So the Guatemalan Revolution began in 1944 after a popular uprising toppled a military dictatorship of Jorge Ubico. Jorge Jose Arevalo was elected president in Guatemala's first democratic election. So they finally had a democracy. They overthrew a military dictatorship, which that's what America likes to believe that we did. We overthrew the evil, tyrannical King George to let freedom reign. But when anybody else does it, we have a problem. Here's what he did. Here's the egregious crimes that the first democratically elected leader in Guatemala did, Lee. He introduced a minimum wage and near universal suffrage and turned Guatemala into a democracy. Ah, what a monster.
No!
How dare you, sir? So he was succeeded by Arbenz, who instituted land reforms, which granted property to landless peasants. Oh, God, like that. And this was land, as I'm going to get into in a second, that like big agricultural companies were like, no. So you start giving land to the poor people, you are putting a CIA bullseye on your forehead.
Like, you start the key things really are giving away land or resources, which land is a resource. So, giving away resources to people who are not the oligarchy, then you better look for a little bouncing red laser dot on your body somewhere.
Just get ready. Yeah. Get ready. Someone's going to be like, how about a motorcade in a convertible? Yay. Like, it's all going to...
I have the area you'll be driving through. We slow down to about 1 mile an hour around this curve, and because it's a great view, and you should really take it in for a while.
I think the best place for you to do the motorcade is through Turkey Shoot Way. It's down, passes through. There's two. It's fantastic. So. Of course, he instituted land grant.
You're gonna love that spot. There's a great cross breeze there.
Cross breeze. It's great. It's great. So after the Guatemalan Revolution, Lee, this is going to come as a shock to you, was disliked by the United States federal government, which was predisposed during the Cold War to see it as communist. Again, it always has that tie to anything as communist after World War II we just didn't like. But let's be honest, what that really means is, communism is bad for the oligarchs. It's bad business.
That might tell you something that we came to view giving away any kind of resources to the people as communist immediately. It was just like
Immediately.
if anything ends up in people's hands who aren't already millionaires, then that's clearly communist. Communists.
That's bad news, dude. You godless communist giving the land away the way Jesus would do. Anyway, this perception grew after Arbenz had been elected and formally legalized the Communist Guatemalan Party of Labor. Now, here it comes. The United Fruit Company, whose highly profitable business had been affected by the end to exploitive labor practices in Guatemala, engaged in an influential lobby campaign to persuade the U.S. to overthrow the Guatemalan government.
Hold on. You're telling me a business, a company, had some kind of power over the United States government or pressure or something?
I find that so hard to believe. It's not as though this whole country was just run by rich dudes who make up laws to fill their bank accounts. I find that I don't know.
Grant, we live in one of the only countries where bribery is fully illegal. So I don't think what you're saying is I'm highly skeptical.
Well, I watched Joe Biden's State of the Union, and I know this: Russian oligarchs are bad, and American oligarchs are freedom fighters. So I know. So, and this is just
True.
the history of how ruling elites have always been on the side of freedom and democracy. So, U.S. President Harry Truman authorized Operation PB Fortune to topple Arbenz in 1952. Although the operation was quickly aborted, it was a precursor to PB success. Eisenhower was elected in 52, promising to take a harder line against communism. And of course, he had staff members, the Dulles brothers, John Foster Dulles and Allen Dulles.
It's funny how often they pop up.
I know. There should always be like a bell sound whenever we mention one of the Dulles brothers being involved. They're involved in every evil, like ding, 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 Dulles brothers.
How do you create two people that evil? Like the Koch brothers were legit raised by a Nazi nanny. So is it the same with the Dulles brothers? Was it a Nazi nanny? Like what, how do you, it's one thing to end up with one rogue child that's a psychopath, but to really be pumping them out like a machine, like an industry, something's going on there.
I think, well, the CIA just has its psychopath nanny school that they just raise these kids in, and they just teach these kids how to be psychopaths, like at a young age. They're just like, your brother's got a shiny new Tonka truck. You don't. How do you get it? And they just pit them against each other.
Literally, one of the Koch brothers still has a scar on his back. It could be the dead one. I don't know. But a scar on his back from where their father or something told them to fight and gave them swords. I can't remember what for. I mean, maybe he said, fight for my love, but whatever it was.
Well, that's what he was saying, even just implied. He was saying, fight.
Right.
You boys battle each other. So yeah, after Eisenhower got the fun-loving Dulles brothers, he had the links that his staff members had to the UFC. So the Dulles brothers were linked to the United Fruit Company, also predisposed them to act against the Guatemalan government. So again, this is what I love about America. The Dulles brothers, who were just inherently evil and worked with the CIA and did awful stuff, also had ties to the United Fruit Company. So what's wrong with being an evil CIA guy and making a little money off the side? Like, there's nothing wrong. You know what I mean? Everybody's got to earn, right? So being
an oligarch wasn't beneficial enough. You got to have a little side gig, side hustle.
I mean, everybody needs a little something to wet their beaks. You know what I mean, Lee? Just to keep them honest. You know what I'm saying? So The U.S. federal government drew exaggerated conclusions about the extent of the communist influence among the Arbenz advisors. Eisenhower authorized the CIA to carry out Operation PB Success in August of 53. The CIA armed, funded, and trained a force of 480 men led by Carlos Castillo Armas. The coup was preceded by the U.S. efforts to criticize and isolate Guatemala internationally. God, have we ever heard? Has America ever done that? Are they doing that at all now? Is that? I'm trying to feel like it sounds.
British Virgin Islands. No, I don't think so.
British Virgin Islands. That's where we're doing it. Some resort. Barbados. Are we really is Barbados stirring up trouble down there?
The Epstein Island, right?
No, that island has been very much been in the fold. So they invaded Guatemala. The force of 480 people backed by the CIA that was funded and armed invaded Guatemala on June 18th, 1954, backed by a heavy campaign of psychological warfare. This included a radio station which broadcast anti-government propaganda and a version of military events favorable to the rebellion. Boy, again, I wonder if there's a war happening right now that we're only getting a one-sided view on. Anyway, I'm just saying crazy stuff.
I can't think. The war on cheese. There's
Yes.
an anti-cheese effort going on right now with a lot of propaganda around it. I feel like.
Yes, the cheese war of the 2020s will be talked about for decades to come. Somebody out there is like, yes, these vegans, it's all propaganda going against the cheese industry or something. So
yeah, that's probably a direct quote from a big pharma lobbyist.
Yes.
Sorry, not pharma, big farm, big ag.
Yeah. So the invasion force fared poorly militarily, and most of its offensives were defeated. However, psychological warfare and the fear of a U.S. invasion intimidated the Guatemalan army, which eventually refused to fight. So even though the 480 men that the CIA funded and backed really didn't do well, we were putting on the radio that they're winning, they're crushing it, which, again, this is what we're saying. And I don't know what's actually happening in Ukraine, but from just the American side of it, it's like Russia's army is just these old rusted out tanks, and they're fumbling around and they're losing, and the freedom fighters are winning. And I'm like,
right. If you believe everything coming out of the mainstream media, apparently Russia's army has collapsed 13 times over the past 2 months.
Yeah, just completely collapsed. And, they haven't bought a new tank since 1986 or something like that. Arbenz tried to, but was unsuccessfully to arm civilians to resist the invasion before resigning on June 27th. Castillo Armas became president 10 days later, following negotiations in San Salvador. Described as a definitive death blow to democracy in Guatemala, the coup was widely criticized internationally and strengthened the long-lasting anti-U.S. sentiment in Latin America. Attempting to justify the coup, the CIA launched Operation PB History.
Stop. They literally, they might as well have just called it Operation Rewrite History.
That's exactly what it is. Oh, God. It's unbelievable.
Operation We Make Up the History.
Oh, and listen to this one, which sought evidence of wait now, Lee, here it comes, Soviet influence in Guatemala. Right.
Dude, the Soviets are always at the bottom of it.
It's that was their evidence among documents from the Arbenz era that effort didn't work well. And Armas quickly assumed, of course, the guy we backed, he quickly assumed, I'll give you. So the guy that the CIA helped get into power, Lee Camp, did he quickly assume the type of powers and leadership that are that of a preschool teacher, B, a peace-loving hippie, C, dictator, like a dictatorial. That's not
Dictatorial? I don't know.
Dictatorial powers. Did he act like a dictator? C. Or D, was he like a camp counselor?
So, flea-ridden meth head is not an option, you're saying?
No, not on this one.
All right, then I'm going to go preschool teacher.
Oh, you were so close.
Damn it.
No.
Damn it. I was hoping to win the government. I was hoping to win the government secrets mug.
Nope, he was a dictator. He banned opposition parties, something Zelensky's done. He imprisoned and tortured political opponents.
Zelensky has banned opposition parties, but not the Nazi party yet.
Those guys we can stay. The opposition parties, the Labor, the Green parties, those guys are a little suspect. The dudes with literally swastikas tattooed on their arms, I don't know. Let's hear them.
We need to hear them out, honestly. Let's give them a moment, hear them out. Maybe they have like a good kind of twist on the Nazi thing.
There's two sides to wanting a superior white race that exterminates anyone that isn't. There's two sides to that, Lee. Let's not be too nutty. He imprisoned and tortured political opponents and reversed all of the social reforms that came from the revolution. Nearly 4 decades of civil war followed as leftist guerrillas fought the series of U.S.-backed authoritarian regimes whose brutalities include genocide of the Mayan people. So we, of course, typical good times, we overthrow a democratically elected leader that was helping the people of Guatemala, put in a new guy who's awful, and then we just let decades of civil war that our military industrial complex profits from, because we're just always got to back whatever the evil pro-corporate people are. And we've destroyed the lives of people in Guatemala since the 50s.
And then inevitably, when there are Guatemalan immigrants coming to our borders, we're like, "What are you fucking doing here? Get the fuck out of here! You don't deserve to be here. You don't have a right to be here, and you're just dirty, and you can't come to this country."
Yeah, I love how we just destabilize and ruin countries, and then why do those people want to leave their own homes and take our jobs? Yeah, because they had great jobs after the revolution. They had land. They had all these great reasons to stay where they wanted to live, in their home country. But logic getting in the way.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Well, all right, there you go. The
Government Secrets segment number 2, featured by Lee Camp. I don't know. I don't know. I put that on there.
Featuring Lee Camp.
I don't know.
So, for those of you who watch my videos, you may have already heard some of this, and I apologize, but it's too fucking important. So, I'm covering it again, and it's happening right now, and I feel like people need to know it. So, sometimes it's important to get into the government secrets that are happening right now. So, we've on this show, we've already covered kind of angles of the proxy war in Ukraine that are not being covered on your mainstream media. So we've already done that. And, the expression that many people are using, which I think is an excellent one, is the U.S. is willing to fight Russia to the last Ukrainian. Very true. But this is a deeper analysis written by Michael Hudson, reposted at Popular Resistance, popularresistance.org. Excellent outlet. Everyone should check it out. And I thought I'd go through some of that as to much deeper than, I'll probably say Ukraine, 5 times through this whole thing, because Ukraine is a chess piece in a much larger situation that is going on right now that I know this will shock everyone, involves the United States quite heavily. So.
I thought we were just innocent bystanders and Big Bad Putin was going crazy and we just finally were forced to get involved. I didn't know.
The West Wing view of the world, that the United States the TV show where the United States is just trying to be awesome and kind to everyone, and there's just shit. Bad people do shit to us.
Oh, West Wing is like the single greatest culprit in propagandizing a whole generation of people. Like Gen X and older millennials have all just raised on just a bed of lies.
And if you ever hear Aaron Sorkin talk in an interview, you understand just how dumb it all is.
Yeah. Yep.
His famous quote most recently was that before Donald Trump, everyone respected the United States around the world. And now no one does. It was Trump undid it all.
Right. That's what I just talked. That's what the end of that Guatemala segment that I just did was like, and now Guatemala has loved us ever since 1954. Right, Aaron. Wake up. Nice. What Ivy League CIA funded think tank did you come up with that shit?
So here is Michael Hudson's analysis from Popular Resistance, or some of it from popularresistance.org. I'm not going to go through all of it, but as President Biden and U.S. national security reports announced, China is seen as the major enemy globally. China's growth was recognized as posing the ultimate terror, prosperity through socialism. Socialist industrialization always has been perceived to be the great enemy of the rentier economy. And so, for one thing, China's not fully socialist. There's a lot of capitalism there, but in terms of the kind of industrial base, it's socialist. And so we view that as the great enemy of our capitalist, oligarchy, kind of a feudal wage slave system that we have. I like the term rentier economy because we kind of spend most of our lives trying to rent back our free time from corporations, trying to rent our lives back. But so the rentier economy that has taken over most nations in the century since World War I ended, and especially since the 1980s. The result today is a clash of economic systems, socialist industrialization versus neoliberal finance capitalism. That makes the new Cold War against China an implicit opening act of what threatens to be a long, drawn-out World War III. The U.S. strategy is to pry away China's most likely economic allies, especially Russia, Central Asia, South Asia, and East Asia. The question was where to start the carve-up and isolation. And just to add here, this is a strategy that's been used by the United States before to carve pieces off. In terms of carving pieces off of China, we've tried to carve, Hong Kong off of them. We're talking about this whole Uyghur genocide that we've made up. And I've done extensive analysis of how hilarious the idea that there's a Uyghur genocide really is, and where those reports on quote unquote Uyghur genocide all come from 3 think tanks that are all funded by Raytheon. It's pretty hilarious. But what that's being used for is to try and say, oh, well, there needs to be a Uyghur indigenous country, a massive land area of China that should just be given to the Uyghurs as their own country. So this is just part of the let's carve up and divide China. And that's also let's divide up and conquer Russia. So Ukraine, yes, is not part of Russia. It was part of the Soviet Union, but many people there, as we've talked about before, consider themselves Russian, speak Russian as their native language. And so it was a Russian kind of vassal state or whatever, connected state to Russia, Russian influence zone. And so the U.S. has been trying to carve off pieces of that, Russian influence.
I mean, it should be noted too, and I'm sure we've mentioned this before, but specific to this piece, that it's not just that region. Most Ukrainians have family in Russia, and Russians vice versa. This notion that it's these two separate war. I mean, it's these two cultures completely overlap. There's family members, there's people that are Russian in Ukraine. It's just it's so nuts how the Western media depicts it.
Yeah. And on top, part of that, and I know I've gone on about this before on the show, but is just this idea of like toxic nationalism, the idea that these borders are part of your human existence, like you were born with that border in your soul, whereas many people in Ukraine, especially in the Donbass region, that border was forced upon them in the 90s, and they were like, wait, what? Like, I'm Ukrainian now? Like, it's just like, I don't understand what just happened. And of course, you and I have done extensive discussions of that with Africa, when the white oligarchs carved up Africa and said, in 1855, and said, "Here are the nations."
I mean, yeah. I mean, we could even talk about Hawaii. I mean, in Hawaii, so many people. I mean, I've seen T-shirts and stuff that say like, "A Hawaiian by birth, American by force." They're like, "You forced us to be a part of America. We're not."
Right.
We're Hawaiian. The Hawaiian monarchy was a thing, and we covered this in an episode until 1893 when the Bayonet Constitution happened.
Yep. So, he says the question was where to start the carve up of the kind of China-Russia alliance, and Russia was seen as representing the greatest opportunity to begin isolating both from China, but also from the NATO Eurozone, which. And I think he starts to talk about this, but Russia, until 2 months ago, was economically cooperating and getting very connected to NATO, to the NATO zone and the Eurozone. And obviously the biggest one was the Nord Stream 2, but 40% of oil in Europe comes from Russia. Russia had a lot of alliances and was working with most of the Eurozone. So. To continue, a sequence of increasingly severe and hopefully fatal sanctions against Russia was drawn up to block NATO from trading with it. All that was needed was to ignite the geopolitical earthquake, a casus belli. And, so I would imagine someone who kind of disagrees with us on the basis of the war in Ukraine and thinks that Putin just decided he wanted Ukraine would go, how can you possibly blame this on America? But as you and I have covered extensively, it's not that the full blame is on America, but it is that America was doing everything we could to try and push this to happen. Pulling Ukraine into NATO, training. There was a Wall Street Journal article 2 days ago that said, why is Ukraine's military doing so well? And I don't know if they're doing that well or not, but let's excuse that for a moment. Why is Ukraine's military doing so well? NATO training. So if NATO is there training Ukraine's military, we're giving them arms and funding and arming them and extending missiles and everything, then how are they, like, they're almost de facto part of NATO. And that was, as Russia had said many times over many years, that was a red line for Ukraine to be part of NATO, was unacceptable. So we did everything we could to try and get to this point. Ukraine has been subjected to a U.S.-backed civil war for 8 years since the 2014 Maidan coup, and offered the chance for the greatest first victory in this confrontation against China, Russia, and their allies. European trade and investment prior to the war to impose sanctions had promised a rising mutual prosperity between Germany, France, and other NATO countries via Russia and China. Many people have heard of the Belt and Road Initiative. This bilateral trade and investment is now stopped and will remain stopped for many, many years. So, sorry, were you going to say something?
No, just shaking my head at how awful this is.
In its place, NATO countries will purchase U.S. natural gas, which, of course, I hate that fucking euphemism. Can we call it planetary death fluid or something? We'll purchase.
You guys want some planetary death fluid? The good news is it's more expensive than the Russian ones.
Yeah.
So, because we have to transport it, it's fantastic. We sometimes build even solar farms to help with the extraction of it, so we can say it's green planetary destruction fluid.
So, NATO countries are going to purchase U.S. planetary death fluid, but they will need to spend billions of dollars building sufficient port capacity, not to mention spending a lot more money just to ship it from the United States. And that could, even just to have the port capacity, could take till 2024. The energy shortage will sharply raise the world price of gas and oil. NATO countries will also have to step up their purchases of arms from the U.S. military industrial complex. And food prices also will rise as a result of the desperate grain shortfalls, because Ukraine and Russia were the main grain exporters. The grain shortfalls resulting from a cessation of imports from Russia and Ukraine on the one hand, and the shortage of ammonia fertilizer made from gas on the other hand. All three of these trade dynamics will strengthen the dollar via the euro. So, and we're going to get into this a little more, but this is serving multiple purposes for the U.S. It's helping to carve up the alliance of Russia, aligned states, and China, and it's helping to turn the Eurozone, Europe, into kind of closer to feudal states back beneath us, because, if they don't need us and they're aligned with Russia, then we start to become more on par with European states, as opposed to lording over them.
At some point, these European countries are going to go, dude, let's just bail on America, right? At some point, they just have to see that our deal is like we offer you a worse deal. Like they have to be aware of and waking up to this and being like, how do we get out of this?
Well, yeah, but it's incredibly difficult because it trying to break free can kill their economy, even more so than it's happening anyway. So, and I did a segment on, central banking and the U.S. Petrodollar. Well, I'm about to talk about the dollar a little bit, but it's the euro. And actually, a long time ago, back before Redacted Tonight, I did a segment on some research from Greg Palast about how the euro itself, the actual monetary, device, the euro, was designed to actually subtract power from European states because they can't make their own decisions. They're linked to a currency that they can't manipulate the way the U.S. can manipulate our dollar and just print it however the fuck we want. But anyway, I'm kind of getting under that, so I might as well keep going. The Eurozone has been created with monetary handcuffs, limiting its ability to create money to spend into the economy beyond the limit of 3% of GDP. For Europe, the dollar cost of foreign debt taken on to finance its widening trade deficit with the United States for oil, arms, and food will explode. For the United States, this is dollar hegemony on steroids. The continent would become a somewhat larger version of Puerto Rico. So, he's saying what I just said, that it really does turn Europe into kind of closer to feudal states beneath us.
And at some point, so China has been doing the Silk Road Initiative, and they've obviously got to be looking at, at some point, I wonder if China's just going to go, if they haven't already, like back channel to Europe and Germany and be like, we'll help you guys out. Or they just like, what, Europe, you guys have sided with the evil America for too long. We're going to watch you collapse. We don't care. Like, that's why, China's been putting all this money into Africa and the Middle East and all these other places. And they might just be like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where China was at on. It largely depends probably on whether Europe is open to it, or whether they just go with the U.S. and say, "Oh, fuck everything, China." But
right, they could do.
So the full blown version of the new Cold War, triggered by the Ukraine war, is likely to last at least a decade, perhaps two, as the U.S. extends the fight between neoliberalism and socialism to encompass a worldwide conflict. Apart from the U.S. economic conquest of Europe, its strategists are seeking to lock in African, South American, and Asian countries along similar lines to what has been planned for Europe. Many African and Latin American countries, especially North Africa, face a choice between going hungry, cutting back their gasoline and electricity use, or borrowing dollars to cover their dependency on U.S.-shaped trade. So it's basically like, borrow and go into deep debt to the U.S., be a vassal state to the U.S., or try and cut loose from the U.S., but likely suffer severe economic ramifications that could involve hunger and everything else to try and do that. Some countries will turn to the IMF for help. The IMF has its own policy of sanctioning countries that do not obey U.S. policy. The first U.S. demand will be that these countries boycott Russia, China, and their emerging trade and currency self-help alliance. So basically, some of these countries may try to turn to the IMF for help. The IMF will say, yeah, we'll give you a loan. But since we're the U.S. largely, we largely obey the U.S., basically, in order to get that loan, you've got to stop working with China or Russia.
Yeah, I mean, the IMF is basically just the loan shark for the mafia of the American empire. I mean,
yeah,
it's really just like, yeah, you guys, with the VIG, it's going to be, an extra $1,000 a week.
Your knees are looking a little bendy. I noticed they bend both ways, right?
Yeah, it'd be a real shame, if you started signing with Russia and all of a sudden you fell down a flight of stairs. That'd be a real bummer. You know what I mean? The stairs get slippery when people start siding with China and Russia all of a sudden.
Just to make sure you don't, try and hitchhike out of here and get away with your money without paying us back, I'm going to take your thumbs because I don't want you heading out on your own without us.
Yeah, I would really hate to see you drink a garden hose full of Russian oil and have a bad afternoon.
I'm sorry, I couldn't come up with a euphemism, an analogy for that. I'm just going to shove Russian oil down your throat.
Yeah, that's what we're going to do. Then maybe your buddies will get the message. You know what I mean?
The very objective of the U.S. strategy is to begin the great splitting of the world economy in two. India has already told U.S. diplomats that its economy is naturally connected more with Russia and China. Wonder how that will fare for India. You know who else recently said that they are more aligned with Russia and will be doing deals with Russia? Pakistan. And what happened to Pakistan 2 days ago? Imran Khan, their prime minister, was voted out in a vote of no confidence with a little bit of U.S. help.
Oh.
So
I mean, what does it tell you when India? Yeah, what does it tell you when India and Pakistan are in agreement on something? And just like this is, everyone's so set up with America that like these mortal enemies are like, nah, we're on the same. And America, we've talked about this before. We're like, yeah, the whole world is against Putin. India and China have 2.5 billion people between them. You're looking at close of upwards of 3 billion people, which is almost half of the world's population, just between China, India, and Russia.
Yeah.
And what is America and Western Europe? What does that add up to? Maybe 1 billion people? Like, what does that add up to? And it's like, I don't know that we're aware of how we're not the big bullies anymore. Like,
I mean, India doesn't really matter because they're only 1.38 billion people. So I don't really think they actually, John Oliver is wrong on almost all foreign policy analysis, but I do remember him talking about how there was an election in India. This is several years ago. And they were saying the margin of error for the prediction on the election was 300 million of votes. The margin of error was the population of the United States.
Yeah. I remember that too, being when I was in China, like 7, 8 years ago. And they were like, it's somewhere between 1.2 and 1.5 billion people. And I'm like, so again, 300 million is the population of the United States. What the size of this country is. It's just like, oh God.
Yeah, they're like, hey, listen, I was only off by a United States. Like, that is not, I was pretty close, okay?
Give or take a United States. Yeah. Just give or take, plus or minus the U.S.
Yeah. U.S. diplomatic strategists view the looming World War III as a war of economic systems. What side will countries choose? Their own economic interests and social cohesion, or submission to local political leaders installed by U.S. meddling? How long will it take the rest of the world to realize that there's a global war underway with World War III on the horizon? The military battlefield will be littered with economic corpses. And of course, when he says that economic war, economic, corpses, that is real death. That's people act like war of economies or economic war is not a real war. We've killed more people with our economic war in Afghanistan or Venezuela than have died in Ukraine so far. So, yeah.
I mean, we'd say sanctions, and we don't realize that means people going hungry, starving to death, all those crimes of desperation that happen as a result of those of people being so broke they don't know how to feed their families. Like, it's awful.
Yeah.
It's and like you say, in some ways it affects it kills more people and damages more families' lives than a bomb does. Which
depending on some things, but and obviously it hits the poor first and the ill and the young, and so that's what's going on in a larger sense, while we all just tack Ukrainian flags to our windows.
I thought the flags on the windows was really helping.
Yeah, I mean, it does help keep some of the mosquitoes out, I think. But
okay.
Other than that, I don't know how much it's really doing.
But I thought Sean Penn's lapel pin was that was the difference right there when he was talking about melting his Oscar.
I kind of thought that, like, the quotes or analysis where people would say, like, endless war will come to you, wrapped in a peace sign. I used to think it was an exaggeration. It was hyperbole. It's like, no, literally, our television channels are telling us you need to seek peace by sending as many weapons as possible to Ukraine and keeping the endless death and endless bombing going as long as possible.
Yeah. Didn't Carlin have a joke about that? Like, ending war, bringing peace with war is like whatever. I don't know. He had some joke.
I mean, I thought you did it pretty well just there.
My fumbling through words was it about as accurate as
listen, I've done that more times than I can count, where you remember the joke and you start to tell it, and then you're like, yeah, remember, like Carlin said, and then all you have is the first line. You're like, fruitcakes are like, it was funny, right?
Right? It's like cakes with fruit. No. Right. All right.
It was something. I think he had other words. It was the same idea, other words.
And other words to it. No, that's brilliant. What he did is he took what I said, and then there was other words to it, so it actually made sense. It wasn't just like inane ramblings of a guy that's tired. You know what I mean? Like, it was really brilliant.
Right. It was brilliant. Listen, if I had all the words, I think I would have nailed this.
I'm only like a dozen words off, so I don't think that we need to make it and turn it into a big thing.
Yeah. So that's where we're headed. Kind of World War III is economic because of the nuclear stalemate. Hopefully, one hopes, unless we're fucking dumb enough to nuclear annihilate ourselves. It's the economic World War III is what's really we're on the cusp of, maybe more so than a like firefight World War III.
Yeah, it's and then you add into that, if we do get into this economic World War III, the ever collapsing environment is just going to add all of this crazy shit and exacerbate all the stuff that's going to happen. It's like while we're sitting there pumping money into Ukraine for a never-ending war, the generals, I did a video on it, where Lloyd Austin and that General Mahler or whatever, they spoke like a week ago in front of the Senate or Congress, and they were just like, yeah, this war is going to take forever. We're going to just battle this one out. They just said it like on the air, like, oh, this is going to be a nice long war, very profitable.
We need to start prepping Americans to understand that we will support the endless bombing of Ukrainian civilians for like years to come.
Yes. On top of the whatever half a dozen countries we're bombing in the Middle East, you know. And oh, by the way, the IPCC came out with a new report last Monday. Like that was like, it's over. Like it's done. Like each month they put out a new report that's worse than the last.
They said we're on a path to unlivable planet. And less than a week ago, I think it was 1,000 climate scientists globally risked arrest. Many of them got arrested. I talked to NASA scientist, climate scientist Peter Kalmus, who got arrested, and it was the first time he was ever arrested. You know, these are not like activists that do it a lot. Right. They're not at pipeline fights. These are like nerdy scientists who are like, oh, so we're at the point where I, who never wanted to be an activist, see the numbers that show we're all going to die, and no one cares, and our mainstream media is not talking about it. And so I'm going to go get arrested.
Yeah. Is that the same guy that he like chained himself to a JP Morgan Chase headquarters or something like that? And the NASA scientists? Yeah. In LA.
In LA. Yeah.
Yeah. And that guy's probably never argued with a cop, for a speeding ticket in his whole life. It's probably just been the most like above board, right. No resistance his whole life. And finally is like, I don't know what else to do.
Right.
Like, well, speaking of climate collapse, folks, I got some new tour dates at GrahamElwood.com. The 28th, I'm headlining Flappers in Burbank, and the 29th and 30th of April, I am in Ventura, California. Rob Placone and I just added the Pacific Northwest. Portland, we're coming to you. Ron Placone and I are coming July 28th. July 29th, we're in Seattle, and July 30th, we're in Vancouver, Canada. Morning.
Folks, you can follow my stuff at patreon.com/Lee Camp, because Redacted Tonight has been canceled thanks to U.S. sanctions, and all the past videos have been banned on YouTube globally. And my other podcast, Moment of Clarity, has been deleted by Spotify. So I'm at patreon.com/Lee Camp. All right, man. Thanks a lot.
All right, buddy. Have a good weekend. We'll talk soon.
Talk soon.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching. We are still in our 9th month of demonetization from YouTube. So support what we're doing at patreon.com/Graham Elwood or rockfin.com/Graham Elwood, which is a blockchain cryptocurrency platform. It's free to sign up, and there's a premium level at $10 a month. And for that, you get everybody on the platform's premium content. Myself, Lee Camp, Ron Placone, Jimmy Dore, Whitney Webb, Kim Iverson, Abby Martin, and many, many others. You can also support what we're doing at Venmo at Graham-Elwood. And go to GrahamElwood.com. We have a PayPal button and a P.O. box. I also have crypto wallets, which are all in the show notes. Thanks for supporting what we do.